Billionaire parents disguise themselves to test their son's fiancée. You won't believe what happens. The sprawling mansion gleamed under the winter sun, its gates guarded by tall, imposing pillars, and an air of unshakable grandeur. Within these walls, the billionaire Aldridge family prepared for a momentous event. Their only son, Adrian, had announced his engagement. Rumors had already begun to swirl in the social circles of the elite, but the parents, Richard and Victoria Aldridge, were not so easily convinced. They had built their wealth on shrewd decisions and keen instincts, and they trusted no one blindly, not even their own son's choice of a partner. Adrian, oblivious to his parents' doubts, had insisted that his fiancée, Isabella, was perfect, charming, poised, and seemingly sincere. Yet Richard and Victoria had seen too many polished smiles mask selfish hearts. A plan formed in their minds. They would descend from their ivory towers, disguise themselves, and infiltrate their own mansion as the very staff who would come into close contact with Isabella. Richard would take the role of the stern, no-nonsense gateman, and Victoria would assume the humble identity of a housemaid. Only then could they observe Isabella's true character. On the morning of Isabella's first visit to the mansion, Richard adjusted the cap low over his eyes, hiding his distinguished features behind a thin, weathered coat. He stationed himself at the wrought-iron gate, arms crossed, watching every vehicle approach with the practiced suspicion of a man who had seen many liars pass. Victoria, meanwhile, swept the marble floors of the grand foyer, her movements precise, her eyes alert. Every gesture, every glance, every word from Isabella would be noted. When Isabella arrived, the elegance of her demeanour was unmistakable. She smiled sweetly, her designer handbag clutched delicately in her hand, and stepped lightly across the driveway. Richard studied her from the gate, pretending to check a clipboard, noting the way she acknowledged him, or rather didn't. Victoria observed from the distance, pretending to dust a vase, but every muscle in her body tensed as she examined the visitor. Isabella's gaze lingered on the mansion, admiring, but there was a calculating glint in her eyes that made Victoria pause. "Welcome to the Aldridge estate," Isabella said, her voice melodic yet rehearsed. She seemed unaware or unconcerned about the gateman who had ignored her as she passed, or the maid who merely nodded in acknowledgement. Victoria felt a shiver. Something in Isabella's poise felt practiced, as though she were already performing the part she thought society expected of her. But was this charm genuine, or merely another mask? Richard and Victoria shared a brief, nearly imperceptible glance, a silent agreement that the game had begun. From behind their disguises, they would uncover the truth, but the question loomed over them. Could their son's fiancée truly be trusted, or would their wealth and influence be manipulated by someone whose heart was not as pure as it appeared? As Isabella toured the estate, Victoria followed silently, her maid's uniform hiding the tension coiled within her. Richard lingered near the gate, watching, calculating, ready to intervene if deceit crossed the threshold. The real test was about to begin, and neither the fiancé nor the son suspected a thing. The morning sun spilled golden light across the Aldridge estate, illuminating the fine details of a mansion built to impress, but also to intimidate. Inside, Victoria moved quietly, the soft swish of her broom masking the tension in her chest. Every step she took was calculated. Every interaction with Isabella had to seem natural, unforced. Today, the fiancé would spend several hours in the mansion, and Victoria knew that her every move could reveal Isabella's true nature. Isabella, meanwhile, wandered from room to room with the practiced air of someone accustomed to admiration. She commented on the chandeliers, the Persian rugs, and the priceless artwork, her voice soft, her smile polished. On the surface, she seemed enchanted by the grandeur of the Aldridge estate. Yet Victoria noted the way her eyes lingered a little too long on certain valuable objects. The subtle way she evaluated each room as if calculating potential benefit, rather than enjoying beauty. Richard remained outside, pretending to inspect the gates while secretly watching Isabella through the ornate wrought-iron lattice. He observed how she treated the staff, the uniformed gardener, the young delivery boy, even the chauffeur. Isabella's smiles were warm but selective, friendly when it served her, dismissive when it didn't. Richard felt a flicker of doubt, a whisper of unease. He had hoped she might reveal a spark of genuine kindness, but so far everything about her seemed measured. Victoria, following closely as Isabella inspected the drawing room, decided to test her patience. She approached with a small spill on the polished floor and a polite question. "Excuse me, miss, did you perhaps notice this spot before?" Her voice was soft, unassuming, but her eyes searched Isabella's for any flicker of irritation. Isabella's gaze snapped toward the maid, her expression unchanged, calm. "Oh, I hadn't seen it," she said lightly, her tone courteous, almost rehearsed. "But I'm sure it's nothing. You must be very attentive to detail." She smiled again, sweetly, but Victoria noticed the subtle flicker of relief that passed over her face as she realized the maid had not scolded her. Was it genuine humility, or was Isabella merely deflecting scrutiny? Hours passed as Victoria and Richard continued their silent surveillance. Isabella interacted politely with the kitchen staff, complimented the gardeners on their immaculate hedges, and occasionally offered a laugh that sounded perfectly natural. Yet there was a faint edge to everything she did, a calculated charm that seemed to weigh the benefit of every gesture. During lunch, Victoria, still in her maid disguise, served Isabella her meal. Isabella's manners were impeccable. She thanked Victoria, complimented the presentation, and yet there was a subtle glance toward the silverware, the way her eyes lingered on the fine china as though cataloguing value. Victoria made a note of it, mentally recording every action, every glance, every small detail. Richard, standing silently near the gate, communicated silently with Victoria through the smallest gestures, a tilt of the head, a subtle raise of the eyebrows. They were learning, testing, observing. The mansion was more than walls and wealth. It was a stage, and Isabella had entered it confidently. The question remained, was she truly the woman their son deserved, or a master of appearances, capable of weaving charm into deception? The first impression was over, but the real test was only beginning. The mansion settled into a quiet rhythm as Isabella moved through its rooms, her laughter echoing faintly against the marble floors. Victoria, in her maid's uniform, followed at a careful distance, pretending to polish the grand piano in the music room. Every tilt of Isabella's head, every soft word she spoke, was under scrutiny. There was an elegance in her posture, a charm in her smile, but Victoria's instincts screamed caution. Something about Isabella's warmth felt measured, calculated, like a performance. Richard lingered outside, watching the driveway and gates, noting the car keys in Isabella's hand, the casual way she inspected the grounds. Occasionally, she glanced at the outbuildings or the servants' quarters, eyes sharp, observant. Richard's fingers tightened on the railing. His son, Adrian, had been blinded by love, or perhaps hope, but he had raised a man who trusted easily. The Aldridge legacy could be at risk if Isabella's heart was not genuine. It was in the library that the first small crack in Isabella's charm appeared. Victoria pretended to dust the shelves, casually mentioning, "The collection of rare books here is one of the family's most prized possessions." Isabella's gaze flicked to the bookshelves, lingering longer than necessary, her hand hovering near a leather-bound volume. "They're beautiful," she said, voice soft, almost reverent, but her eyes betrayed curiosity beyond admiration. Was it interest in knowledge, or the thrill of opportunity? Victoria remained silent, watching the subtle tension in Isabella's fingers as they traced the spine of the book. This was the kind of detail that revealed a true character. Genuine admiration does not hesitate. It does not calculate benefit. Yet Isabella's eyes scanned the room in a way that suggested calculation, a mental note being made. Later, in the garden, Isabella offered to help Richard, who was pretending to repair the gate. "Perhaps I could assist," she said, her voice bright and inviting. Richard studied her quietly, testing her sincerity. She bent slightly to lift a tool, but only after he gestured approval, and her attention was fleeting, immediately drifting toward the estate's grand fountain. The effort seemed minimal, a token of engagement rather than true assistance. Victoria observed from behind a flowering hedge, her heart tightening. She remembered Adrian as a boy, full of innocence, never imagining that anyone would test him with deceit. Could Isabella's actions truly be harmless charm, or the first steps of manipulation? Every smile, every compliment, every soft laugh was being weighed, measured, and filed in their memory. As evening approached, Isabella moved toward the drawing room for tea, her charm seamless, her voice honeyed, yet Richard and Victoria both sensed an undercurrent. There was ambition in her gaze, subtle but undeniable, a hunger carefully hidden behind delicate manners. The parents exchanged a look behind their disguises, a silent agreement that tomorrow would require deeper testing. The mansion, bathed in the golden light of dusk, seemed to hold its breath. Isabella's visit had begun smoothly, yet beneath the surface, the Aldridges could feel the currents of calculation, the delicate dance of appearances. They had disguised themselves to uncover truth, but the truth was proving more elusive than either had expected. Tomorrow, they would push further, probing the boundaries of charm, patience, and honesty.
The next morning, the mansion was alive with anticipation. Victoria, in her maid disguise, moved silently through the halls, arranging fresh flowers and preparing the rooms. Richard, still the gate man, adjusted his uniform and straightened the cap over his eyes, his mind racing with strategies to test Isabella further. Today, the Aldridges planned to challenge her kindness, patience, and respect for the staff, qualities they deemed essential for anyone who would enter their family. Isabella arrived promptly, radiant in a pale blue dress, her smile polished and perfectly timed. She greeted Victoria politely, yet without warmth, and exchanged pleasantries with Richard at the gate, her tone formal and courteous. The parents watched from their hidden vantage points, their hearts weighing each gesture. Would she reveal compassion, or continue the subtle performance of charm? Victoria decided to orchestrate the first test. She had prepared a series of small mishaps around the house: spilled water in the kitchen, a vase precariously balanced on the edge of a table, a tea tray slightly askew. These were simple, everyday challenges designed to observe Isabella's reactions. A person's true nature, Victoria knew, often revealed itself not in grand moments, but in the mundane, the unnoticed details. The first mishap came in the kitchen. Victoria pretended to fumble with a kettle, spilling a small amount of water across the counter. "Oh dear," she said lightly, glancing at Isabella. "I hope I didn't ruin anything." Isabella stepped forward, hesitated for a moment, and then picked up a cloth to help. "Here, let me help you," she said, her voice soft. The gesture seemed genuine at first glance, yet her eyes flickered toward the polished countertops, as if weighing the effort against the potential for benefit. Next, Victoria led Isabella toward the library, where a stack of letters had been carelessly placed. "I was trying to organize these," Victoria murmured. Isabella reached for the papers, but instead of carefully arranging them, she straightened only the top envelope and glanced around the room before letting the rest fall back in disarray. The effort was minimal, efficient, and calculated. enough to appear helpful without committing fully. Richard observed from the gate, noticing Isabella's subtle impatience as she walked through the gardens. He had arranged for a minor obstruction, a fallen branch across the pathway. Isabella hesitated, then carefully stepped over it, making no attempt to move it aside for the staff. Her charm remained flawless, her voice warm in conversation, but the small acts of self-interest were becoming more apparent. Victoria exchanged a subtle glance with Richard, their concern deepening. The first test had revealed cracks beneath Isabella's surface polish. Her actions were courteous but measured, kind only when convenient. As tea was served in the drawing room, Isabella continued to converse effortlessly, laughing and complimenting the mansion's beauty. Yet the parents could not shake the uneasy feeling that charm alone could not conceal ambition. They had hoped for warmth, empathy, and humility, but the evidence so far was ambiguous, leaving their instincts on high alert. The first test was complete, but the real trial had only begun. Victoria and Richard knew that patience, persistence, and careful observation would be required to reveal the true heart of Adrian's fiancée. Tomorrow the stakes would rise, and Isabella would face challenges that demanded more than charm. They demanded character.
The mansion was quieter than usual that morning, but the tension beneath the surface was palpable. Victoria, moving through the corridors in her maid disguise, could feel the weight of the day ahead. Richard, still stationed at the gate, adjusted his cap with a subtle frown. Today's tests would be more personal, more revealing. They intended to push Isabella beyond her polished charm and see if her patience, honesty, and empathy could withstand pressure. Isabella arrived as usual, radiant in a soft pink dress, her laughter light and melodic. She greeted Victoria with a practiced smile and exchanged formal pleasantries with Richard at the gate. Everything seemed effortless, but both parents sensed that this was the calm before a storm, a calm carefully crafted, not natural. Victoria had prepared a series of minor crises for Isabella to face, testing her reaction under discomfort. The first came in the kitchen. A small fire had been set in the stove, a harmless blaze in the pan, meant to simulate an accident. "Oh no!" Victoria cried, stepping back. Isabella froze for a moment, eyes wide, before grabbing a nearby cloth and quickly moving to smother the flames. Her actions were decisive and competent, yet there was a flash of irritation in her eyes as she worked. She muttered under her breath, a slight edge that Victoria caught immediately. Was it frustration with danger, or frustration at being inconvenienced? Next, in the garden, Victoria discreetly knocked over a delicate flower arrangement that had been carefully planted along the main path. Isabella bent to pick up the fallen blooms, her smile faltering for a heartbeat. She straightened them neatly, but the care was mechanical, almost hurried, and her gaze swept the surroundings as if she had more important matters to consider. Victoria made a mental note. The fiancé's compassion was conditional, efficient but lacking true warmth. Meanwhile, Richard observed from the gate as Isabella interacted with the staff. A gardener approached with a request for assistance in moving a heavy wheelbarrow. Isabella offered help at first, but quickly excused herself, citing delicate shoes and a busy schedule. She smiled politely, yet her eyes betrayed impatience. Richard's suspicions deepened. Was she incapable of genuine humility, or unwilling to expend effort for others? The final test came in the drawing room, where Victoria staged a minor theft of a small but valuable decorative object. Isabella noticed immediately, her expression flashing annoyance and suspicion. Rather than showing concern for the household or offering a gentle inquiry, she demanded answers sharply, her composure briefly cracking. Victoria's heart skipped. This was the first clear sign of self-interest and possessiveness. Her smile returned quickly, polished, but the mask had slipped, revealing the underlying priorities. Victoria and Richard exchanged a glance across the room. The fiancé was intelligent, composed, and socially skilled, yet the cracks were undeniable.
Charm could conceal so much, but not everything. Her actions today had shown glimpses of ambition, impatience, and calculation, qualities that could spell trouble for Adrian and the Aldridge legacy, if left unchecked. As Isabella left the mansion that evening, her goodbye was gracious, but the parents could not shake the feeling that the game had changed. The mask had slipped, even if only slightly, and the true test, the one that would reveal her heart completely, was still to come. Tomorrow they would escalate the challenges, pushing Isabella towards situations where only sincerity and integrity could prevail.
The mansion seemed colder that morning, the grand halls echoing with anticipation. Victoria moved with quiet precision, her maid uniform hiding every ounce of tension. Richard, still the gateman, adjusted his cap and surveyed the driveway, his eyes sharp for any sign of deceit. Today was the day they would test Isabella in a way that left no room for charm or pretense. An ultimate test designed to reveal her heart in action, not appearance. When Isabella arrived, she was radiant as always, her dress pale lavender, her smile effortlessly warm. She greeted Victoria and Richard politely, but there was a faint edge of confidence in her eyes, a subtle certainty that she had navigated the previous tests flawlessly. Both parents, however, remained vigilant, knowing the final trial required more than composure, it required genuine character. Victoria prepared the first scenario. A small child, the son of a visiting friend, had been left momentarily unattended in the garden, playing near the koi pond. The child's laughter carried through the estate, but soon Victoria's careful staging created a minor danger. The child teetered on the edge of the pond, reaching for a floating leaf. Isabella, observing from the patio, froze for a moment. Her smile faltered, replaced by instinctive concern. She rushed forward, scooping the child safely into her arms, her voice soothing. There was no hesitation, no calculation, pure, immediate care. Richard, watching from the gate, noted the difference in her demeanor. The impatience, the subtle self-interest from yesterday, was gone. This was the first moment of true authenticity he had witnessed. Yet, the ultimate test was yet to come, a moral challenge that could not be navigated with charm or strategy. Victoria led Isabella toward the study, where she staged a scenario designed to test honesty and loyalty. A large, sealed envelope lay on the desk, purportedly containing sensitive family documents. The envelope had been accidentally left unattended. Victoria quietly mentioned, "This should remain private. It's very important to the family." Isabella's eyes flickered to the envelope. There was a long pause, a moment where the temptation was evident. She took a deep breath, then deliberately stepped back, her hands folded politely. "I wouldn't touch that," she said firmly, voice steady. "It's not my place." Victoria felt a wave of relief and admiration. The choice was instinctively right, free of hesitation or calculation. Finally, Richard arranged a subtle confrontation in the foyer. A conflict was staged between two staff members, designed to see if Isabella would intervene with fairness and integrity. She approached calmly, listened to both sides, and mediated with wisdom and empathy, showing patience and understanding rather than judgment or condescension. By the time Isabella left that evening, the parents had witnessed a side of her unseen before: her genuine compassion, integrity, and moral strength. The charm and ambition had not vanished entirely, but they had been balanced by authenticity, warmth, and a steady heart. As the gates closed behind her, Richard and Victoria removed their disguises in the privacy of the study. Victoria exhaled, tears of relief glimmering in her eyes. "She's worthy," Victoria whispered, voice choked with emotion. Richard nodded solemnly. "Not perfect, but she's real. That's what matters." For the first time,
They felt confident that their son's heart and the family legacy was safe in her hands. The mansion was quiet the morning after Isabella's ultimate test, but inside, emotions ran high. Victoria sat in the study, still dressed as a maid, yet her mind was far from her duties. Richard had removed his gateman disguise, pacing slowly near the window, hands clasped behind his back. They had observed Isabella for days, testing her patience, kindness, and integrity, and now, for the first time, they were ready to reveal the truth, not just to themselves, but to their son, Adrian. Adrian arrived at the mansion mid-morning, excited for a surprise his parents had promised him, a special introduction that was meant to assess Isabella further. He entered the grand foyer, only to find his parents waiting, no disguises, their faces serious. Confusion flickered across his face. "Mom? Dad? What's going on?" Victoria stepped forward, her eyes gentle but firm. "Adrian, we need to talk about Isabella. We've been observing her closely for several days." She paused, letting her words sink in. "We wanted to see who she truly is, beyond charm, beyond appearances." Adrian's brow furrowed. "You watched her? What do you mean?" Richard took a deep breath, speaking steadily. "We came in disguise as staff members. I was the gateman, Victoria the maid. Every interaction, every choice, every reaction was noted. Isabella's character, her values, her heart, we needed to see them ourselves." Adrian's mouth fell open, shock mingling with disbelief. You pretended to be the staff? All this time?" Victoria nodded, emotion thick in her throat. "Yes, we wanted to protect you, to ensure that she is someone worthy of you and of the family legacy. There were moments of doubt, moments when her charm seemed calculated, but yesterday she showed her true self. She acted with compassion, honesty, and integrity. She faced challenges not with cunning, but with a genuine heart." Adrian's eyes widened, a mixture of awe and gratitude crossing his face. "All this? For me? You wanted to make sure she was real?" Richard placed a hand on his son's shoulder, his stern gaze softening. "Not just for you, Adrian, for her too. She deserves to be loved for who she truly is, not for what she can appear to be." Adrian's expression softened further, tears threatening to spill. I I knew she was special, but I never imagined how much care you took to understand her. I love her, and now I can see you love her too in your way." Victoria smiled, stepping closer. "We do. And now that we know her heart, we can welcome her as part of this family, not because of her charm, wealth, or appearance, but because she has proven herself through action and integrity." Adrian's relief was palpable, a weight lifted from his shoulders. "I'm so glad you finally saw her for who she really is. And I'm proud of her, and grateful to you both." Richard and Victoria shared a private glance, a silent acknowledgement of the emotional journey they had endured. Their son's happiness, their family's future, it was safe. Isabella had passed the ultimate test, and now, at last, the masks could come off. As Adrian left to meet Isabella again, Victoria whispered softly to Richard, "She's not perfect, but she's genuine. That's all that matters." Richard nodded, a rare smile crossing his face. "And that is everything." The sun was setting over the Aldridge estate, casting golden light across the sprawling gardens. The mansion, once a stage for tests and hidden motives, now felt warm and alive. Victoria and Richard stood side by side in the foyer, their hearts lighter than they had been in days. The long game of observation, disguised surveillance, and cautious evaluation had finally come to an end. Adrian entered, a broad smile on his face, with Isabella close behind him. Her steps were confident, yet humble, and her eyes shone with sincerity. She paused for a moment, noticing the unspoken anticipation in the room, and then turned to face Richard and Victoria. "Mum, Dad, I want you to meet Isabella properly," Adrian said, his voice brimming with pride. "Not just the woman I love, but someone who has truly shown her heart." Isabella bowed slightly, a graceful gesture of respect. "It is an honor to meet you both," she said softly. Her words were polished, yet there was a genuine warmth underlying them. A warmth that had survived every test, every hidden challenge the Aldridges had presented. Victoria stepped forward first, her eyes glistening. "Isabella, over the past few days, we have observed you, not as a fiancée but as a person. We wanted to see who you truly are when no one is watching, and we have seen it." She paused, searching Isabella's face. "Your compassion, honesty, and integrity, they are undeniable. You have our respect." Richard followed, placing a firm but gentle hand on Adrian's shoulder. "You've proven yourself not through words or charm, but through action. And that is what matters to this family. Welcome, Isabella, not because of who you appear to be, but because of who you truly are." Tears threatened to spill down Isabella's cheeks, but she smiled, a mix of relief, joy, and gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered. "I promise to honor your trust and to love Adrian with all my heart." Adrian stepped forward, taking Isabella's hands in his. "I've loved her from the start, but now, seeing how she faced every challenge, every test, I'm even prouder. She's more than I could have hoped for. And now, we can start our life together, fully, without secrets or doubts." Victoria embraced Isabella warmly, the act breaking the last barrier between them. "You're one of us now," she said softly. "We've been cautious because we love Adrian, and because we've learned that appearances can deceive. But you, your heart, is real. That is what matters." Richard nodded, a rare, relaxed smile crossing his face. "Our tests are over, and so are the disguises. From today forward, there is only honesty, love, and family." Outside, the mansion seemed to shine brighter, as if reflecting the newfound harmony within. The tension, suspicion, and hidden motives that had shadowed the estate for days had been replaced by trust, understanding, and acceptance. Adrian and Isabella walked hand in hand toward the gardens, the beginning of their shared future stretching before them like a sunlit path. In that moment, the Aldridges realized that love, tested, true, and sincere, was the greatest legacy they could leave. And as they watched their son and his fiancée together, Richard and Victoria knew, without doubt, that their family was safe, their hearts content, and a new chapter had begun. The mansion, once a stage for hidden games, now rang with laughter, warmth, and hope, symbols of love, truth, and the promise of tomorrow. The end.
Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel for more powerful stories. Comment your thoughts below. Thank you.